It's my month.
Get away.
It's my monthly. Nobody else in the family likes it, so.
All right, when's this thing kicking on? Are we on now? Okay, here we go. All right, I'd like to call to order the December 16, 2025 meeting of the West Palm Beach Planning Board. Madam Clerk, if you please call the roll.
Sam Fisk.
Present.
Deborah Rain. Let the record reflect that Deborah is not in attendance. Peter Pivko.
Present.
Stephen Mayans.
Present.
Will Carante. Let the record reflect that Will Carante is not in attendance. Patrick Mayfield.
Present.
Jean Marcel Jr.
Present.
Okay, thank you. Next is order of business is approval of the November 18, 2025 minutes. Has everyone had the opportunity to review them? Are there any changes or corrections? If not, I'm looking for a motion for approval.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Passes unanimously. Next on our agenda is report of the planning staff. Ms. Aponte.
Good evening, Ana Maria Aponte, Development Services Director. Happy to be here. I just want to do a brief update on the status of the Downtown Master Plan update. If you recall, we started the process earlier this year to do an update of the Downtown Master Plan. The Downtown Master Plan has been in fact the original master plan since 1994, and then we did an update in 2007 that Siskowicz helped us draft. And earlier this year, we hired them back to help us to update again the master plan. So we have been working with the Siskowicz team to do the community engagement and all the process for the update of the master plan. They have an amazing group of consultants working with them. I'm sorry, this is a PowerPoint, so it's not that easy. Working with different groups of professionals, helping us draft a more comprehensive plan. Lumber advisor, helping with market trends and conditions. We have landscape architecture, mobility and transportation, and also traffic analysis. So they are working very hard on that. They have been engaging in visioning since earlier this year, meeting with developers, with the community, with the commissioners, the mayor, staff, and everybody involved, stakeholders in the downtown. At this point, we have done many meetings, 4 big meetings for visioning. The last one was conducted last week, December 9th, with the community, where the consultant presented to the public kind of the main big items and recommendations. We are, after the gathering information and analysis, we are right now in the phase of basically presenting the proposals and going through that. They're drafting regulations already. They have not been presented yet, but they will in the short and near future. And we hope to start the approval process around March next year. Basically, what they are doing is identifying the elements to enhance the quality of life of the downtown. We are already in a stage in downtown. We don't need to attract development, so we just need to control the development and being sure that we protect what we have been creating for the last 25 years and advance that quality of life for all the community. So they have been using kind of an approach of really targeted strategies to allow buildings in some areas to go higher, in other ones remove some of the incentives that we currently had, but protect the public realm, the public spaces, and generate kind of the future for the downtown for the next 25 years. So I'm not gonna go in detail of the strategies because it's a very full agenda today, but I definitely want to encourage you to go to our website and watch the presentations that they did. All the presentations are in there, recorded in the website, but the last one from December 9th has the whole explanation of the proposals, and you can watch the consultant directly to explain what the vision is being presented. As I say, the approval process we're expecting to start in March next year, so we will be in front of this board with the consultant explaining to you all the details of what is the vision and that they are presenting and the details of the regulations. We are hoping that the full approval will be done by the end probably of June, depending on how it goes. That's all I have for the master plan. I don't know if you have any questions about this.
Any questions of staff?
I'll wait till March.
All right, thank you.
Apart from that, the only thing that I want to say, it's December 16th, so happy holidays to everybody, and thank you very much for all your help this year with all the approval and development in the city.
Thank you. All right, then if there are no questions of staff, next on the agenda, remarks by the chairperson, of which I have none. That then brings us to the declaration of ex parte communications. Let me begin by saying, as for Planning Board case number 1955C, I received an email and letter of support from former City Commissioner Kelly Shoft, and I provided to the clerk and asked her to make it a part of the record. As to all other matters this evening in which I will be participating, I have had no ex parte communications, I had no written communications, I've conducted no investigations, I have made no site visits, and I received no expert opinions. I ask that these disclosures and all written communications be made a part of the record. Let me start with you, Sam.
Okay, as to Planning Board case 1955C, I did participate with a Zoom with the applicant earlier this week, or maybe it was last week. As to all other matters on the agenda this evening, I have had no ex parte communications. I have received no written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made any site visits. I have not received any expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
As to item 1955C, I did have a conversation with the applicant and also acknowledged receipt of an email from Commissioner Kelly Shoft. In regards to the other items on the agenda, I have not had any ex parte communications, nor have not written communications. I have not conducted an investigation, nor have I made a site visit, and I have not received expert opinion. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
Ratchet.
With respect to Planning Board case 1955C, I also received the email from Kelly Shoft in support. Other than that, can I have the thing?
One of these.
Oh, they put it there. Oh, there we go. With respect to all other agenda items this evening, I have not had ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit, and I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
Thank you, Gene.
As to Planning Board case 1955C, I did participate in a Zoom call. Any decisions made today will be based solely on the evidence presented. As to all other matters on the agenda, I have not had ex parte communication. I have not received written communication. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit, and I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all matters be made part of the record.
Thank you so much. That then brings us to the swearing in of speakers. Would everyone who plans to speak or offer testimony this evening please stand up and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be truthful? Thank you. You may be seated. Okay, next on the agenda are continued cases of which there are none. That then brings us to Planning Board case number 1955C. I am obliged to recuse myself, having consulted with our legal counsel, Sam Thomas. The applicant is Temple Israel. My wife was a board member for the organization during much of this development process. I was counseled at that point to recuse myself the last time this project came before us. That same advice guides my actions tonight. Even though my wife is not presently a board member, I know how important this project is to our synagogue and worry that might influence my deliberations. So I'll be stepping down from the dais and turn it over to our very able Vice Chair, Peter Pivko.
Okay, may we hear from the applicant?
Good evening. For the record, Harvey Oyer of Schutz and Bowen on behalf of the applicant, which is Temple Israel, together with its partner, Related Ross. It's a pleasure to be back before you. If you recall, we were before you a couple of years ago for the rezoning of this site to make it a Core 1 site in the CMUD. We are before you tonight seeking review and approval of a special review of a site plan together with 6 variances. For everyone's information, you are not sitting in your capacity as a recommending body as you typically do, because this is in the Curry Mixed Use District. You are the final arbiter of the site plan review and variances. So with that, let me set the table for you quickly. I'm going to introduce the project, then I'm going to ask the architect of record to come forward, walk you through the architectural plan, design philosophy, et cetera. I will then come back up and discuss the 6 variances. So that is the order of the program. We are joined by our entire professional team, so should you have questions, we have the principal of the developer here, as well as the entire professional team. So I believe you all know the site. Temple Israel has been in our community for 101 years. They've been at this site for about 80 of those years. It is the site denoted in red. And for context, are you not seeing my little hand moving? Meredith, maybe we do need the pointer. There we go. So the site in red is the Temple site. It's a long, narrow site with 155 feet of frontage on North Flagler Drive. To its north is the Olara project, which is going vertical. That is a 306-foot, over 400-unit, 2-tower project. To our south is an existing 9-story, 110-foot, 400-unit multifamily project called Flagler Point. To the south of that is the Ritz-Carlton project that you have reviewed and approved. And behind our site is another project that you have reviewed and approved. So there's a lot of redevelopment in this area. The nature and context of this area will change quite dramatically in the next few years. So our request is a special review of a site plan for a 27-story multifamily building with 100 luxury residential condominium units, not apartments, together with a 5-story, 204-space parking garage, and 6 variances that I am going to walk through one by one with you after you've seen the architectural portion of it. Here's the building, here's the 5-story garage. This is Pine Street, which runs east-west from Dixie to Flagler. It's a fairly narrow roadway, about 30 feet in width. This is Flagler Point, our neighbor to the south, and our neighbor to the north, which is just off screen, is the Olara project that is under construction. Let me walk you through site plan at high level before I turn it over to the architect. So the footprint of the building is here, but the footprint of the tower is under 1/3 of the project. Most of this is parking garage and mechanical. The resident and guest ingress and egress is off of Flagler. There is a loading and service ingress egress onto Pine Street. I'll call your attention to this public open space. On the west side of the project, you'll notice that there is a black hash line that runs down the center of it. Everything on the east side of it is part of the site plan that you are considering tonight and is open space to buy up on the height. If you recall, CMUD has a height chart. You have a base height of 111 feet by right, and if you're in Core 1, you can buy up another 195 feet to a total of 306, and you can choose from a menu how you elect to do that. It's usually a combination of many of those menu items. One of our menu items on the height bonus is public open space which again is everything on the east side of the hashed line. Everything on the west side of the hashed line we did not need, but we're making that public open space anyway. So effectively, the public is receiving double the open space, even though we do not get to use the west part as part of the bonus. It's just a bonus to the community. You'll also notice that the building runs at an angle. That is for several reasons. One, Flagler Drive runs at an angle. Number two, we have this long-standing neighbor here that if we put the building, sort of parallel with the angle of the road, we would materially harm their northeast water views. That's a second reason that you see it at an angle. And a third that I will give you better visuals on is we have a pretty dramatic elevation change between Flagler Drive, which is at about 2 feet, to our finished floor, which is FEMA +2, which is about 9 feet. So in a relatively short distance, we have to go 7 feet, increase 7 feet in elevation, and it helps us with that grading if we push the building back a little bit further. This is the ground floor plan, and this shows you some of the components of it. The ground floor of the garage is actually not parking, it's service, loading, mechanical, utility rooms, and above that are 4 floors of parking. I will note that a prior version of this, if you're wondering why we were here 2 years ago for an upzoning and it took us 2 years to get here with the site plan, it's because this is not our first iteration of the site plan, it's actually our third. And where this started, if you recall, you might have read about it in the newspaper, it included 199 residential units. Tonight we are before you with half of that, 100 units. It also included a rebuilding of Temple Israel, a house of worship. So house of worship on the ground floor, 199 units above it. It was a much larger building. It was an 8-story parking garage for a variety of reasons, including the temple wanting to move to a new location where they had more ground to grow their house of worship, a preschool that they historically had there that they would like to put back. They have found a replacement site that allows them to grow. So we redesigned the project, reduced the density, and have a much smaller garage, all of which we think benefits the neighborhood. There's less view blockage for both our neighbor to the south, Flagler Point, and our neighbor to the north, Olara. So I mentioned that we have 111 feet of building height by right under Core 1, and that we have an opportunity to bonus up another 195 feet to 306 feet, the same height as our neighbor to the north, Olara, and the same height as our neighbor 2 doors to the south, Ritz-Carlton, which you already approved both of those. And these are the ways that we elected to do that. We elected to make improvements to Curry Park, and those improvements are in the form of dollars to Curry Park. That allowed us to get up to 90 additional feet of height. And just for the record, that's $2.25 million contributed to Curry Park. We've also offered to pay that or a portion of that in advance. It's not payable under the code until CO. In order to encourage the redevelopment of the park. For everyone's benefit, we've offered to advance some of that money. The second method that we used from the bonus up menu was 25 feet of height for payment into local mobility options. That was a $625,000 contribution to the city. The third is using LEED, or in our case, Florida Green Building Council silver certification, which gave us 20 more feet. We're actually building a gold certified building, but we only needed the 20 feet from silver. So again, the community benefits a bit by that. And our public open space, as I already alluded to, in return for creating 4,800 square feet of public open space, you bonus up another 60 feet. We can only use the 60 feet, but we provided double the public open space. So with that, I'm going to stop here and invite Breen Mahoney, who is the architect of record from Roger Ferris, his firm, to walk you through the more interesting part of this, and then I'll come back with the much less sexy version of the presentation, which is walking you through 6 very technical variance requests. Thank you.
My name is Breen Mahoney. I'm the managing director for the commercial portfolio at Roger Ferris and Partners. We're the design architect for the project. We're working in collaboration with Revelta, who is the architect of record, and together we're putting forth the design I'm going to walk you through today. The building itself, the project is comprised of 3 main components. Harvey touched on this a bit. In the forefront of the image here, you have a slender residential tower. That, of course, is the main component of the project that fronts the Lake Worth Lagoon. Just behind that, you have the second component, which is a low horizontal parking garage. That fronts Pine Street, also as Harvey went through a moment ago. And the final component, of course, is the public open space, which also fronts Pine Street on the west end of the property. The building as a whole is articulated as a sort of modified parallelogram in plan, with a gently curved facade aiming towards the southeast, a dynamic corner, as you see here in the foreground, anchoring Flagler and Pine Street. The building facade is articulated with a series of outdoor rooms, effectively private terraces for the residents that open out again towards Lake Worth Lagoon and Palm Beach beyond. Enclosed spaces for living, you see there in the glass, mitigates the space between those terraces and creates a primary vertical expression for the tower. And we have accents of white plaster, primarily on the horizontal slabs there, offering a bit of a horizontal strike in the composition. As the building meets the grade, the face of glass is recessed, pulled back from the face of the building on the ground and second floor to express the perimeter columns as it meets the grade. The second level comprises of the primary residential amenity spaces. That has a continuous terrace behind the colonnade that looks again out towards the water. And tucked in underneath there, as Harvey explained, is a porte cochere and a motor court just under the building form itself. The building is inflected, as Harvey mentioned, away from Flagler Drive. There are some architectural gestures there that do open up views, as he mentioned, for some of the neighboring properties and also for the building itself. It is primarily to address negotiate the elevation change. As Harvey walked through, the existing site elevation around the perimeter is quite low as it relates to the base flood elevation established by FEMA that we're designing to. That change in elevation, as Harvey mentioned, is a little over 7 feet. And so inflecting the building back from Flagler Drive, as you see here, allows us to negotiate that within a reasonable slope. It also allows us to incorporate a significant amount of landscaping at the front of the building, which in our opinion is appropriate for the scale of the urban boulevard that is Flagler. That amount of landscaping does track around the building in various forms. And before I leave this image, we'll get into the ground floor where the actual motor court itself is a little bit more visible in some of these images. This is the tower here as seen from the south with the slight curve facing southeast. On the east, you see actually it's not just the northeast, but the southwest corner, also articulated by the acuteness of the parallelogram. The building material is primarily glazing. There's a significant amount of transparency here for an active facade. Those elements that are solid are white plaster. It's a view taken on Pine Street looking out towards the waterway. We're looking in the foreground at the open space here envisioned as a public amenity, as Harvey walked through, very lush in its landscaping. The garage itself is articulated by a graphic screen. It's a mesh composition that has a fairly pronounced graphic image on it there. The base floor of the garage is finished with plaster, as are the framing around the parking garage that holds the mesh screens. Landscaping continues down Pine Street in a couple different forms. There is a ground plane of landscape. There are, of course, the street trees that are mandated by the city. And as you can see there on the building face, the ground floor, we have vertical expression of that landscaping in the form of vines, softening the way the garage lands on the ground. What's also visible here in the trees is an active face for the back side of the garage, which is actually not loading or parking. There are some very targeted building amenity spaces positioned against that to promote a little bit more interaction between the building itself and the public open space. You can see here is a view on Pine Street looking at the intersection of Flagler. The height difference here as seen in the lower site elevation here at the corner, that is the lowest point on the site, and then here raised above roughly 6 feet at this corner. It gets a little more, it gets a little taller as the site travels on Flagler. Harvey hit the high points of the ground floor, but I will touch on them. There is as one point of primary ingress and egress to the site, and that is the curb cuts you see here on North Flagler. That takes you to an internalized motor court for residents. The access to the parking garage is pushed back from the public realm, sort of tucked away underneath the building, only accessible within the site itself from that motor court. The building lobby spaces and residential lounge and reception spaces on the ground floor all face out towards the water and anchor what we feel is the most prominent urban corner at Flagler and Pine Street. Of course, these facades are all transparent, so to promote activity at the ground level. Behind that, along this diagonal here, is primarily building support spaces in the form of storage, mechanical, and the loading dock, which, as with the vehicular motor court, is internalized within the building. The primary ingress and egress for that is off Pine Street, as you see here. And then these are the series of residential amenity spaces, things like hobby rooms and such, to promote building activity as it faces the public open space there to the west. Second floor plan incorporates the entirety of the interior residential amenity spaces. You can see that the glazing is set back from the outer colonnade, as I referenced in the rendering, providing a continuous outdoor terrace that rings this floor. The core for the building is located on the west side so that we can maintain essentially active facade around what we feel are the most prominent public-facing fronts of the building. Behind that is what we feel is a very efficient parking deck here, a single racetrack, if you will. This is a 5-story parking garage set over a single floor of loading and service on the ground floor. Pardon for the racetrack analogy there. It's just the circle. Residences start on level 3. There are 4 residences per floor of the tower. One that anchors the northeast area of the plan, one that anchors the southeast area of the plan, and 2 in the center here. Again, behind that, you see the layout of the parking garage. The top level of the parking garage does incorporate some mechanical space that is tucked into an embedded mechanical well and is not visible from the public realm. It is screened on the two exterior faces of the building. I'm going to move up through the tower. The planning of the units doesn't change as the tower rises. As Harvey made mention to, there is the primary outdoor residential amenity space is located on the very top of the building. As you see here in this image, it will include a pool along with some various seating type spaces, cabanas, lounge spaces, etc. The enclosed portion of the roof encloses things like air handling units, supportive spaces like bathrooms, etc. There is no internalized conditioned program spaces per the zoning regulations. I should also mention that the rooftop itself, as you see in the submission, is significantly landscaped and meets the criteria for the greening of an outdoor roof space. Elevations for the project, I think the renderings are perhaps a little bit more graphically clear, but the primary component on the cladding are the window system itself. There are elements of the facade, as you see here, a very narrow portion of the core that's referenced on the west side of the building. That is the only portion of the tower that is solid in nature, rising to the top and meeting the bulkhead there. Each slab is faced with and finished, with the white plaster, again providing just a subtle horizontal reading there. You can see here this sort of graphic abstraction of a screen for the parking garage. The screen, of course, is set there to mask the parking within. I'll just go around the building here. The idea of the integrated terraces is in direct response to the nature of the zoning for West Palm Beach, creating active, and not just in terms of programming, but in terms of the interplay of facade elements, recessing and projecting to meet the criteria of the planar break. I think that's me. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Anybody have any questions of the architect?
I had one question about the material of the screen device on the parking garage.
Sure.
You said, was it a fabric screen?
It is. It is a mesh fabric that is essentially stretched across the facade itself vertically, if you will. It will be segmented. We're working with the manufacturer now to figure out exactly what that module is. And the limitations for the graphic expression are fairly limitless. Essentially, we're working on the design. What you see here, this idea of a muted, colorful abstraction to provide some animation on the street, that's the intent of it. And we'll work with the fabricator to translate that into a final design.
So this would be the, I guess, like the public art component of the project with the.
No, this is just the design for the parking garage. The public art element, and I think Harvey can speak to that more directly, is not in this location.
Okay. Yeah, but this is not the final design, what you're representing.
It is representative of that. Just from the technology we have and translate, it is going to look more or less like that. That's correct.
So it's kind of like, it looks like greenery and
yeah,
vines and stuff.
the idea is that we're quite sensitive. It not implying actual greenery on the facade. That's not the intent there. But we do want to reference something that feels organic, something that is verdant in terms of the coloration of that, and is complementary to the actual landscape elements which you see there on the ground plane.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Did you mention, was there anything on the rooftop of the garage or just the rooftop of the actual structure?
There is no, let me go back to that for you. There is a very small residential terrace on the garage roof, which you see there, hugging the backside of the tower. That is for one particular unit. The intent is not to activate the garage roof as an amenity.
Okay. So not even for green space?
At the present moment, no.
Okay. Thanks.
Just as a follow-up question, sorry, to that.
You have any questions?
The roof, is it just like a built-up TPO roof, like white or?
Yeah, we're looking at various membranes or ballast stones.
Ballast,
Yep.
okay.
The idea there is that it will be a reflective nature. Sorry, let me say that differently. It is meant to be reflective in nature in terms of resisting a heat island effect, so it doesn't contribute to the neighborhood. It's not reflected in the sense that causing undue hardship on neighbors. Sorry, just want to clarify.
Okay. Sam?
So can you talk a little bit about the public space? Is it only accessible from Pine Street? Is there an access from the building to the open space? Give us some detail on the...
Sure, the answer is yes to both of those. It is fully accessible off Pine Street. As you see here, the two pathways come right off the sidewalk and bring you into the full depth of that space. There is also accessibility from the residents of the building only going out to that green space. So that you can see here what's labeled as a hobby room for residents. These are spaces that are meant for residents to interact with, so essentially to activate the facade, but also programming elements that one could envision they take things out into the park and they help animate the park itself. we were thinking, the idea from a programming standpoint was what programming elements can we integrate in that side of the building that would help promote activity in the park itself.
Okay, and in terms of what the park's going to contain, it looks like a walking path, some benches. Are there any details on that, or is that even part of the specific requirement in terms of what it has to have?
Yeah, there is a more, not included in here, but actually, give me a second. There is a much more in-depth landscape plan submitted by DS Boca, and here you can see in the background the sort of intent, but it is a mix of scales in terms of vertical trees, lower planting elements around the perimeter of the park, as you see here in the pathways, essentially helping to create and form some of these outdoor spaces.
And is it like a 24/7 park? Is it gated or totally open?
I'll let the client speak to that directly, but in our design discussions, there has been no desire to gate this. This is an open space. Let me make sure I say that incorrectly. Yes, that is correct.
And then maintenance, who's required to maintain that? I don't know if is it like it's not gifting to the city or anything, so it's still owned and managed by the property?
That is my understanding, but that's not for me to speak to. We can have the owner speak to that.
Okay.
Harvey can answer that one.
They will maintain the park.
Okay,
Okay, yeah, no further questions.
Great, thank you so much.
you pass.
Thank you.
Thank you, Breen. Now we're going to do maybe the less exciting part than looking at his beautiful images. So we have 6 variances. I'm going to walk through those one by one. And incidentally, a couple of them do not match up in the same order as the staff report. So if you're following the staff report, one of these is in a different order. The first 2, and I've clustered these together because they occur right next to each other, variances 1 and 2 are both along Flagler Drive. Variance 1 is a separation requirement from other driveway access points. The code requires, at least in this part of the city, 125 feet of distance between driveways. We have Flagler Point North access point here. Flagler Point, incidentally, has 3 access points, 2 on Flagler Drive, 1 on Dixie. And given the distance of our property, which, as I mentioned at the beginning, is 155 feet in width along Flagler Drive, we cannot comply with all parts of the code. Let me give you an example. We have a 50-foot separation requirement from Pine Street and a 125-foot separation requirement from our Flagler Point's north access point. That's 175 feet of requirements. Even before we cut a driveway in, you mathematically cannot do 175 feet and 155 feet. As you well know, this is not an uncommon problem. In fact, I'm not acquainted with any residential project on North or South Flagler Drive that didn't have a variance or a waiver for driveway separation, including all the ones that have come in front of you. Olara, the project behind us that runs along the south side of Pine Street to Dixie, the Ritz-Carlton, Family Church, Forte, South Flagler House, Bristol, all of them, the one that you approved last spring, the Coulter Perco project on South Flagler. I'm unfamiliar with any project on Flagler Drive that has met that. The real issue and separation requirements, of course, are for public safety. So here's what we've worked with staff to accomplish. We want the separation from Pine Street because that is where the most traffic will occur. From our project, from Olara, from people cutting through from Dixie Highway, the project behind us that's already been approved. And again, that's a narrow 30-foot wide road right-of-way. So we wanted to get the maximum separation from that. We wanted to also achieve separation from Flagler Point's north access point. But if you look at the the traffic here, and I put it in this little box. We had Kimley Horn, and Stephanie is with us this evening, run the traffic analysis in April, first week of April of this year, so still height of season, peak traffic season. And you will see that in the AM peak, there's only 4 inbound and 0 outbound. And in the PM peak, there are 34 inbound and 7 outbound, and that is for 400 residential units and 7 commercial units. Why is that? Well, think about it logically. You have a full access point on Dixie Highway, which is easier to negotiate because if you're headed north, you can make a right-hand turn out instead of negotiating 2 lanes of traffic and turning northbound on Flagler Drive. So it's safer. And you have the southern access point at Flagler Point, which is where most of the traffic goes in the AM peak. You are headed downtown if you work downtown. You are headed to your nearest I-95 interchange, which would be Palm Beach Lakes Boulevard. So you're headed south, not north. So these numbers intuitively make sense. Stated differently, there's not much activity occurring there. And when there is activity occurring there, the critical part for safety is that you do not have the parallel on-street parking, which presently exists today. Why is that problematic? Well, when you're turning out from the north access point and there is a car parked on-street parallel, you cannot see the oncoming traffic around them. So to remedy that problem, we have bought out all of the spaces here. You can buy those out with the city, so there will not be any on-street parking here going forward, meaning a clear visibility angle for anyone that is exiting, albeit very few people. The other reason, which I mentioned earlier and Breen mentioned as well, is you have about a 2-foot elevation here, and because of the chronic flooding of Flagler Drive throughout our city, the FEMA requirement is 7 feet plus the 2 feet of additional freeboard, so 9 feet. And that, as Breen mentioned, to negotiate a comfortable slope on this driveway, we needed to get it as far away from Pine Street as possible. Otherwise, only an alpine climber could get up that 9 feet of elevation change in a very short distance if we had it any further north. So this is a confluence of factors that required us and staff with our traffic engineer and the city's traffic engineer to find the most appropriate place to locate this, and it is here. It gives us the most gradient room. It gives us adequate separation from the busiest intersection, and it gives us more than adequate separation from a non-busy intersection. The only hazard there would have been not being able to see around the on-street parking, which we've eliminated. So I think we've addressed every concern with respect to variance 1. And again, this is the most common variance granted on any multifamily project on North or South Flagler Drive. The second variance request, which is here, is you have a maximum 24-foot width drive aisle. Why do we have that in the code? To protect pedestrians, so they don't have to negotiate a very wide drive aisle. Well, we decided to divide this in half and create 2 14-foot. One is ingress, the other is egress. And to make that safe, which is a common methodology, you'll remember we did this with Family Church, we created a pedestrian refuge in between, so there's a stopping point that allows a pedestrian to navigate that safely. Why did we need that extra space? Well, again, it's the angle of the road. So any northbound traffic that is turning left into the ingress point has a different turn angle to negotiate not only the grade change, but the angle of the road. So we needed a little bit more space there. I will also note that this is a very commonly granted variance, particularly when you put the pedestrian refuge in between. By reference, our neighbor to the south, Flagler Point, they have the same 29-foot opening that we have, but with no pedestrian refuge. So their southern access point is 29 feet in width, which is our request, 5 feet beyond the code, but with no pedestrian access. And their Dixie Highway opening is 38 feet, dramatically more than the code, 14 feet more than the code. So again, it's not uncommon. And the purpose for which this was created, which is make pedestrians safe, we actually make them 10 feet safer because we have 14-foot width aisles instead of the 24 in the code. And this is just reiterating what I already stated. And this is what it looks like. Breen gave you a similar image, but effectively you're at 2 feet here, and you need to be at 9 feet finished floor in that amount of distance. That's nearly impossible to do and meet the code sloping requirements if you did it up near Pine Street. Moreover, moving it closer to Pine Street gets you in conflict with significantly more traffic. Variance 3. The code states that for multifamily projects, in addition to your foundation landscape plantings, in addition to your landscape buffer, and in addition to your street trees, you are also required to plant 1 tree for every residential unit that you're proposing. So in our case, 100 residential units, 100 trees on top of those other 3 landscape requirements. That cannot be done in this amount of real estate. And I'm not aware of anyone who's accomplished that on any of these multifamily projects. This is what it would look like.
An orchard.
We're proposing 27 trees. I'll show you where those are located, resulting in a variance request of 73 trees. Now, you are probably wondering, how did everyone else comply with this? Absolutely no one, to my knowledge, has ever complied with this. Let me give you examples. The Ritz project needed 148 trees, 158 trees. They provided 46. No variance was required. Staff didn't require it. A different reviewer at the time, I believe. Jeff Green's project in CMUD, 152 units, did not have 152 trees. Again, staff did not flag this as an issue that required a variance. Alara has 458 units. Not anywhere near 458 trees. Again, staff never flagged it. The Spruce, which is just outside of CMUD and in Mud, 270 units, again, not flagged by staff. And the project behind us on Pine Street, same issue. It's always been in the code. Not sure why it wasn't recognized previously. We seem to be the first instance in which that portion of the code has been applied. But I want to show you why that does not work on this property. So our site plan only includes the east half of the public space, so we can only count these trees, even though, as you saw in Breen's image, there are trees here. We cannot count them because it's not within our site plan. So this is where we're proposing our 27, and these are substantial trees. And this is the other landscaping. These street trees in the swale area between the sidewalk and the road, those are required trees, as they are here, as are the foundational plantings, as is the landscape buffer between our neighbor. And we have to comply with these additional trees in addition to those other 3 layers of landscaping. So quite frankly, there's not the real estate to do it. If you look at where else we could do it, it would be in this area, but this is our utility area. If you put larger trees in here, the root balls would interfere with the utilities. The canopies would overhang the utilities. So we have very few opportunities, which I've outlined in orange, where those opportunities are. The 4th variance that we're requesting is a building length variance. CMUD limits a building length to 250 feet. And in some codes, if you put an inch of separation between buildings, you get to start all over again with a calculation. Many codes have a minimum distance. For example, our downtown has a 5-foot planar break, and then you start a new building. In CMUD, it's a pretty substantial separation requirement. It is 30 feet of separation between buildings. Otherwise, they are conjoined and made into one building. Obviously, no one has done that yet, and every one of our peer group projects in CMUD that you've already reviewed and approved all had a variance for the 250-foot building length. But I want to make a distinction between the tower length and the garage length, because the overwhelming majority of this variance request comes from the 5-story garage. And we had a design that actually met the 250-foot, but that triggered the taller garage. And on balance, working with staff, it made more sense to seek this variance, which staff supports, push the garage down, squeeze it out wider. It preserves views for our neighbors to the north, Olara, and it preserves views for neighbors to our south, Flagler Point. So this seemed to be in the best interest of the entire community. If you follow my cursor, this parallelogram is the tower. This is that's the 27-story building. This is the 5-story. And again, it's possible to comply with it. It just would have more adverse impacts. And again, our entire peer group have all received this variance. This was the 8-story version, much bigger tower. This is when we had double the density, had an 8-story podium. This is what it looks like as a 5-story, sort of squeezed out in a horizontal fashion. It allows all of this area to now be open. Call it 30 feet of openness above the 5-story garage that would not be there if we built the 8-story garage. Not to mention how inefficient that is to have a smaller footprint garage. This is looking at it from Flagler Point, so that 30 feet would be somewhere in here. They're a 110-foot building, so we've given them 40 feet of height on the top. Variance 5. Now this is a little confusing. If I lose you, stop me. This CMUD, when it was enacted, particularly for Core 1, I think was generally focused on Jeff Green's properties to the north, which is the substantial part of CMUD and the substantial part of the Core 1 zoning. And that was envisioned to be an extension of Northwood Road, 25th Street, heading towards the water, sort of an urbanist form-based philosophy of buildings right up on the street edge, ground floor retail, almost like our downtown master plan. It certainly didn't contemplate, being outside of that area or being on an angle of Flagler Drive. It contemplated rectangles and straight lines. So the idea is there's a minimum and maximum setback, so your building has to begin within these 2 hashed lines, meaning it's not too close to the sidewalk, but not too far away from the sidewalk. So to comply with this, we would have to have our entire building face in between these 2 red hashed lines. That doesn't work for a variety of reasons that I think we've already described, including the elevation change and the sloping. It would also obliterate the northeast views of our neighbor to the south, Flagler Point. And so we need a variance from this minimum maximum, which again, I think only was envisioned for a different part of CMUD. And variant 6, this is perhaps the most confusing to follow, so please stop me if this confuses you. Most properties, the property line is on the inboard side of a sidewalk, and the sidewalk and the swale space out to the edge of road is usually in public ownership. In this case, let me see if we can highlight this. In yellow is our property line, which is actually out in that swale area. So the code requires, and we have kind of conflicting or 2 sets of codes here. We have the CMUD code that requires us to put in street trees, sidewalks, and street furniture. But then we have the general landscape code that is geared more towards suburban development that requires us to put in this 10-foot buffer. And with this strange alignment of our property line actually being out in what would otherwise be public ownership, we somehow have to fit in the swale, a mandatory 5-foot sidewalk, our foundation planting on the edge of the building, and there's not enough real estate to do that here. Incidentally, there's presently no sidewalk here at all. There is sidewalk here, it ends about here, and no sidewalk exists here. So we're creating a sidewalk for the public here for the first time. So in sum, we need 10 feet of landscaping and a 5-foot sidewalk in an area that does not allow both of those to occur. And again, I attribute this not just to the geometry of the property that we inherited, but the fact that we have a general landscape requirement in the code, and then we have these CMUD obligations to put in street trees and benches, street furniture, et cetera. So that results in a 5-foot variance request, which again, staff supports. So your standards of review for this evening, you have 2 things you're voting on: the special review, and again, you're the final arbiter of this. The standards for your review are found in section 94-55B as in Bravo 2. We believe we comply with all of those standards. Staff concurs with us. And your standards of review for variances are found in section 94-38D as in Delta, subsection 6. We believe we comply with all of these. I'm happy to go through them if you'd like, but in the interest of time, we'll come back to them if you have questions. Staff concurs with that. We've had substantial public outreach over the last 2 years. As you know, this is just our outreach with our neighbor to the south, Flagler Point, because they were the most affected. They were the tallest building in the neighborhood for 30 years, and now they're going to be the shortest building in the neighborhood because they're being built all the way around. And as you can imagine, that engendered some concerns on their part. So we met with them more frequently, including twice in the last couple of weeks, to share not only the rezoning concept originally, but all iterations of our site plan, construction management agreement, so they know when we're building, how we're screening, et cetera, so as to not disrupt their lives or minimize it as much as possible. We've done public outreach with our other neighborhood groups, Pleasant City to the west, all the Northwood districts to the north, of course, our Chamber of Commerce. And we're delighted to tell you that the overwhelming majority of our neighbors support us, as they did for the rezoning 2 years ago. Staff is recommending approval of our site plan as presented this evening, with all 6 variances as presented this evening. They did attach some conditions of approval. We're in agreement with all of those proposed conditions of approval. So with that, Mr. Chair and Planning Board members, we respectfully request your approval of the project. We stand ready for questions. I'd like to reserve time, Mr. Chair, for rebuttal should it be needed. Thank you very much.
Anybody? Sam, questions?
I want to go back to this public element. So you mentioned that that only half of the public park is included in your site plan. Explain that a little bit, why only half would be included and the other half would not be included. I guess from your landscaping tree count you mentioned.
Yeah, I'm going to ask the client, because there are 2 pieces of this that were not included in the site plan. There are part of the legal description of the Temple Israel property includes the land on the east side of Flagler Drive, which is riparian rights, and this piece. But I'm not sure why it was excluded.
It's on the rendering.
I'm sorry?
It's on the rendering, the elevation.
Yeah, but I think Sam's asking, why did we not include this in the site plan? Do we know why that was not included?
So we're assuming 9,600 square feet of public open space to count under hyper-sensitive, right? Yes. So, and I'm not sure what that is.
Mr. Fish, why don't we get back to you with an answer on that? I'm really not sure why it was excluded from the site plan.
Okay.
I know why the riparian piece was not.
And I guess, the bigger question, we all know that, policing public spaces can be challenging, especially in this particular area. And I guess, is there a maintenance agreement or a policing agreement involved in this with the city, or who's going to actually manage and run, making sure that it's safe, that it's being maintained? And
So the developer will initially, and once turnover to the association occurs, it'll be the association. Very similar to what the Bristol has on the north side of the Bristol is that open space along the seawall. It's their obligation to maintain it, light it, secure it. That would be our obligation.
as far as I know, isn't that, but areas like, it's blocked off. It's not, you can access it through a gate, but it's not a 24/7 access.
So there are hours at the Bristol that they can lock the gate. This presently is proposed to be completely open, is it not? Yep, presently proposed. And if you recall, the Coulter Perco project that came in front of you in the spring had a similar issue where they wanted to put gates. Actually, their neighbors wanted them to put gates, and they would secure those in the middle of the night. It would be cameraed. This will be cameraed. It'll be completely secure. But to qualify as public open space for the height bonus purposes, it has to be open to the public. So it's not our goal to restrict public access to it. It's our goal to encourage public use of it within reasonable safety standards.
I mean, I guess it's better, it's a city question to see like I can just see this being an issue because it's not wide open to the waterfront or something where it's easily accessible. It's kind of tucked away in between a parking garage and another parking garage or building on the other side, and then Flagler Point on the south side. I can just see, knowing what happens in that area already in some of the other public spaces, if it's not policed by the city, there's not going to be security there. It's not going to be. It just seems like it could be an issue, assuming the city has thought about that.
Let the city answer that, but I do want this board to recognize that Olara is under construction. That's directly across the street from the park. When this is built and the other Savannah project behind it, this proposed public open space will be completely encircled in brand new development. So the dangers that are there today, which I know you're aware of, those will not exist at the completion of these projects. It'll be dramatically different.
Ana Maria Ponte, Development Services Director. I think the principle behind the public open space requirement is to create spaces similar to what the downtown does. In the downtown, if you see all those public spaces that are like on Dixie Highway, they are public open spaces. They're privately owned, privately maintained. They cannot be gated, and they have to be open to the public. We work with the property owners to put no trespassing signs, so they are basically the police can come in and remove anyone that is there doing things that are not appropriate for public use. But they are privately owned, privately maintained. They're responsibility of the property owners, and they have been working fine. In the downtown, I hear your concern because this area is a little bit different, but this area is also being transformed, so.
No, yeah, it's not really the neighborhood itself as much as a lot of the other public spaces that I can envision in my head are more street facing. So it's just more open. So gives it wider sidewalks. People can kind of walk through the open spaces. This is not quite as open, or it doesn't appear quite as exposed. And so it just, looking at it, just looks like it could be a potential problem that.
I agree. I mean, we work with the applicant when they propose the open space. That's one of the reasons why they kind of located the hobby room and the other space that they have on the back, because we asked them to put some relationship between the building and the open space to activate the space and have some interaction between the inside and out, to have eyes on the open space, and that definitely was a concern that the staff expressed due to the location of the open space. But they decided to use that as an option.
Okay.
Your question about why they're only counting half of it, they only use half because that's what the code, the maximum allowed open space. We're not sure either why they don't want to count any trees that they put on the other half as part of the requirement, and they are just basically not making it part of the site plan.
That's confusing.
Sam, I wanted to point out one more thing that was just pointed out to me. Directly across the street, across Pine Street from the public open space is ground floor retail as part of the Savannah Olara project. So this will be an activated part of the street. I know that's hard for those of us who grew up here to envision all of this being different, but, and the property line between this project and Flagler Point is a retaining wall. So, you know, there's relatively protected borders on all sides of this except Pine Street, which again will be well-lit landscape, security cameras from 3 projects all the way around it.
Well, I'm just about to ask you because there is, I assume, a 24-hour concierge service, a doorman.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So it's easy to put a TV camera in the back for security.
Absolutely. It will be cameraed. It'll be monitored. I guess the only question would be, do we want to gate it? And there's precedent for gating it. There's precedent for not gating it. We have not proposed that. I guess ideally we would like it to be, you know, truly open public space at all times. But if it necessitates that, we can always come back for a minor amendment with staff if that proves to be unworkable. But it would be our goal.
We can always add it as an optional condition, you know.
Just on this point, so the last 50 feet of the westward feet of the parcel is legally part of the parcel. And
Yes.
it's their property.
It's legally part of the parcel.
But they just can't count the trees on that portion for whatever
Because
reason.
it was not included in the site
It
plan.
wasn't, so,
Had it been included, they could count the trees.
so it's not included in the site plan, but it's still going to be proposed and constructed that way.
Yes.
Is that a separate application on that last 50 foot of
No,
what's going to?
it's part of this proposal, but it's not included within the boundaries of the site plan. So if you're concerned about,
What
you
we
know, how
see
do you know
is-
you're going to get what you're looking at?
What we see is what's going to be there,
Yeah,
100%.
I imagine you could make that a condition.
And you're telling me that there is planned to be a street between, on the westward boundary?
No,
There's
that's
going-
an existing alleyway that has existed for many years.
But with the project that was approved to the west, you're saying that's going to be an open activated frontage?
The alleyway in between. Yeah, I don't know why that was not abandoned as part of the project to the west. Do you know, Anna Maria, whether they need that for utility access? Eric may know.
Yeah,
Yep. Eric probably has the answer to this.
sure.
Other questions for the applicant? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. May we hear from staff?
Good evening. For the record, Eric Schneider, Principal Planner. I have a presentation that I could go through, but the applicant provided a lot of the good details and drawings. So, question about the public open space. One of the requirements is it cannot be gated, has to be open to be counted so that they can get there. I believe it's 65 feet of extra height, or maybe 95 feet of extra height, as part of the incentive program. My understanding from the applicant was they did not include that area. They designated out about the 4,800 square feet or so because that was the maximum or the minimum amount that they required to get the extra height. Calling it public open space for the rest of it to the west of this property didn't give them any extra height, so they've left it for possible future development because they have rights to develop on that piece that you see to the west of that dotted line, kind of where the dot is. The alley itself, why that exit point is there, and I'm not sure the applicant has a picture, but I think I have them. Let me. So the project to the west of this that was approved has there's an existing alley that runs east to west from Dixie Highway, and of course now I can't find the cursor on the screen, from Dixie Highway runs all the way over to the edge of the property and actually goes past it. You see that little indent there by what you can see is a parking lot. So the applicant to the west requested to abandon that alleyway. The issue was they were required to pay the value of the alley to the city. They did not do that, so that approval went away. So now that access easement that you saw on the park drawing or the other drawing has to remain. There's one there now so that the alley is not a dead-end alley. That is why that's there. If that alley ever gets abandoned, then this easement would be abandoned and the current applicant, Related Ross, would be able to do something on that piece. So there's a lot of things on that way western part of this property that cause that to currently be not a viable developable piece. However, the applicant could come back in and develop this in the future. Obviously, it looks a lot better with the path going in and out and all that landscape there. But in order to preserve the ability to develop that piece in the future and then not have to rip out those the trees that are there, that they've shown on the landscape plan, they're not counting those as part of the 100 trees that they are required to have. If the applicant wanted to, because they are required to sign a perpetual public open space agreement for that area, maintenance and everything else, if they wanted to include both halves of that with a dashed line there and restrict that forever as in more public open space, then they could count all those trees that were put on there. But that is not what was expressed to staff. Therefore, the trees on that piece can't count towards meeting the tree count because they could go away at some point. So that is an option the applicant has, but did not choose to pursue. As far as some of the other items, the staff does agree that the variance requests and the variance standards have been met, as also the level 3 special review standards. That's all outlined in the backup material that you have. I do want to point out that, and I think Mr. Oyer touched on it a bit, there are two variances that are a little different, and they're actually less variances than were in the backup material. The first is the length of the building. I have a snazzy image. Let me go get you a snazzy image. So this is actually the north elevation, and the 336 feet 11 inches is measured from the furthest west projection of the garage to the face of the building. Originally, in what's in the backup material in the planning board report, the applicant had stretched that out in their measurement that they gave to include the balconies, but the balconies are not part of the building. And as was discussed, as the building slopes backwards, that actually is the furthest projection. The little balconies there are just a little point that if you remember seeing the elevation drawings and the floor plans. So there's actually less length of building than what was listed in the report, so it's a less of a variance required. I do want to point out, that I know Mr. Orr touched on it, that it is broken a little bit, but this area here that I just popped up in green is actually a recessed area from where the building slopes back. I don't know if you picked up on it on the site plans. So it is not a flat projection at 336 feet 11 inches long. It is less because the garage is built separately, even though it's connected from the tower where it slopes back there. The other variance I want to point out that's a little different is from what's in the report is the distance separation. The applicant was able to their engineer was able to tweak it a little bit and look at that driveway location, and they were actually able to move the driveway 1 foot further away from the property to the south from the driveway. So in the backup material, it's 60 foot 3 inches, and it's actually 61 feet 10 inches away. So it's less of a variance than was previously requested. So those two are two changes from what the variances that you will be voting on And so I just want to put that in the record. And I don't have anything else other than to say, yes, staff supports this. We did find, because we found that the variance standards and the special review standards are met.
Can you repeat that distance again, Eric?
Okay, so in the backup material,
Yeah.
you see the little red lines. That's the distance separation, and Mr. Oyer had mentioned it about that because of the geometry of the lot and those code requirements, there's physically no way to meet that. It had been in the backup material 60 feet 3 inches, but the applicant was able to shift that driveway a little bit, and so now it is, the variance is at 61 feet 10 inches, so the driveway separation is 61 feet 10 inches, so 1 foot further away from the driveway to the south than what was in the backup material. So I just want to point that out.
Okay.
Any other questions of staff?
Any questions?
Just going back to the west component of this for one last question. So as a hypothetical, that last 50 feet of the parcel could potentially be sold and repackaged with an adjoining site in the future? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, it could. Off the top of my head, I don't think there are any actual variances that are affected by the distance or the square footage of the lot. So yes, they could theoretically sell that parcel, that piece off the back. They would have to go through the subdivision process. Staff would have to evaluate to make sure that all the components worked. Obviously, that walkway would have to be shifted a little bit through an amendment, but yes, it could be sold. It could be developed with a building as well, would have to meet the Curry Mixed Use District Core 1 standards, but yes, it could be sold off.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jean. No questions, Sam, or staff? No? Yes?
What we were just talking about here. So, I mean, with all the plans we're looking at is showing everything landscape. There's a walking path, there's lighting, but it's not actually part of the, I guess I've never seen that before.
No, well, it is part of what you guys are looking at tonight. The part that's highlighted in green is the area that is specifically counted and has to be public open space. That remainder part to the left west of that's a little crosshatch there, is part of their property. They have to maintain it. They're planting it with what's on there, and that's part of this plan, the requirement. Well, you're not approving the exact site plan, you're approving the waivers, or the variances and the concept of the plan. There's as you'll note, the very first condition is that the formal site plan has to be approved after this meeting based on what you guys approve. If you approve all the variances and the level 3, then we can move on with the site plan as approved, the site and landscape plans, et cetera. So that will be approved. If they sell that off, redevelop that piece that's in the crosshatching, they would have to come in to staff with at least a minor site plan amendment, if not a major site plan amendment, which would then trigger coming back to the planning board. Just depends on what they want to do there. So that is why, in the interest of caution, none of those little circle trees that you see on there are counted towards meeting their requirements. I would love it if they said, we want to do that whole area as public open space. We want to restrict it all as public open space. And then they don't need to pay into the fund 72 trees or 73 trees, which are 73 trees. They only need to buy into the fund 65 trees.
Okay.
I would love that. It's not what was presented to me. And that's not what you guys are making a determination on whether or not that is or is not in those pieces, but they meet all the standards that they're required to meet, is what staff has reviewed with what they're presenting. So
there's no part of the approval that even pertains to that parcel.
yeah, yes, your plan, this is that it's got to be landscaped. They can't just leave it.
Well, I know, but if they said, we're going to just put a fence around it and we'll sod it and we'll make it look nice, but we'll just fence it.
Well, they could have proposed that. We would not have been in support of that, but the plan that they're going forward is to have it landscaped until at some point in the future they redevelop it, if it gets redeveloped. I mean, they are required to have a landscape buffer, and you see that buffer on there.
Well, but I'm just trying to...
Along the far side along the road, so they've put their western landscape buffer in and their southern landscape buffer in. But yes, theoretically, they could have come in and said, no, we're just going to leave it sodded and put nothing in there. That would not have been favorably moved forward by staff, though.
But we're approving the site plan as it exists?
You're approving...
Or the variances?
The variances.
Okay, got it.
That would allow the site plan to be approved.
Got
and
it,
that
okay.
this special review, which is the project, and there's the 4 standards that are in the code and on the backup material, I didn't reprint them, that say, yes, and it's actually in your, in the backup on the planning board material, the motion page, the relationship to the site and surroundings. Is this project as presented, the tower, the garage, the landscaping, meet the surrounding development in the public realm? The circulation and traffic flow, does that, promote pedestrian circulation, safe vehicular traffic? The building design, the architectural style should not be restricted. The proposed development should be evaluated based on the quality of the execution of the design, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to read it all to you guys. And then the public realm and how this works to the public realm. And how does the building interact with the public realm? Okay.
Okay.
I mean, you can ask the applicant. I think they were going to come back and give some more when they talked a little bit about it. So I guess you can go back and ask them what they're going. Oh, here we go.
You really opened a can of worms. Look at that.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Okay, so
Yeah, you do one from Eric or from staff or, okay.
I'm only addressing this piece. I know Eric has more to go, but rather than lose the train of thought. So your question to me was, why was it excluded? I didn't know the answer. Now you've posed these other questions. In talking to the client and the landscape architect, we can include this in the site plan. No one seems to have a recollection why it wasn't, other than reserving the right to develop it separately in the future. But I don't know how viable that is on its own. But if it is the pleasure of this board, and if you want to make it a condition of approval, that your approval is subject to putting that strip in the site plan, you've already graphically seen it. The landscape architect believes he can add 15 more trees, which would change the variance from 73 trees to 58 trees, and the provided from 27 to 42. So you could do that. We cannot reapply for it tonight. You'd have to make it a condition of approval. Again, I'll reiterate that. If it's your pleasure, your approval could be conditioned upon that western parcel west of the black hashed line being included in the site plan, changing the variance to a 58 tree variance request from a 73 tree variance request, and that is condition of approval 5 Bravo would need to change those same numbers. So it would change the numbers, the number of trees in the variance and the number of trees in condition 5 Bravo, if you'd like to do that. We just cannot reapply for it here tonight. But we are agreeable to that if that's important to you.
I was just trying to understand if part of the proposal or at least the presentation is showing a 9,600 square foot open space that's for the public use, whether or not that's a good place for it, or whether, I assume that there's been conversations with city staff on, hey, how do we police this? Who's I mean, leaving an HOA up to police a big public space if there are issues seems to be challenging at best. But if it's proposed to be a public space, I just thought it was odd that it wouldn't be included in the site plan, especially considering one of the variances has specifically is about trees, and if this would have more trees, it just trying to understand why it wouldn't have been included, I guess.
Yes, so those are two different questions. I think I just answered question 2, why didn't we include it? That was the reasoning. If it's your pleasure, it can be included with the proper, conditional language by you. The policing part is a separate question,
Yeah.
which hopefully I answered. I can't tell you what's going to happen there any more than I could forecast 12 years ago when we did the Bristol, whether that was going to be problematic. The same questions arose there. So far it has not, because Bristol was the first mover in what was a radical change to South Flagler. I forecast a radical change coming in this area of North Flagler. Again, it's going to be surrounded by entirely new development, including retail frontage directly across the street. So I think it naturally becomes a lot safer. It will be camera secured all at our expense, not the city's expense. And if it's a total failure, I guess we come back to the city and ask for a minor amendment to do something different. But we want to meet the spirit and intent of the code, and actually the letter of the code is that it's open to the public.
Okay, so I guess that's amenable as a requirement to include the whole site into the site plan, or?
We're willing to accept that as a condition if you want to make a motion to approve it conditioned upon us adding that into the site plan. And again, we could fit 15 more trees in there, which would reduce our variance request, and you'd need to change the language of condition 5, if that's what you want to do. Otherwise, we're happy to stay with our original proposal.
If it's an issue of the variance, the original document calls for 73 variance. If you have less of a demand, then you're fine. You're not asking for more.
No, we're asking for less, right? It would reduce the variance to 58.
Yeah. But if we're already granting 73 and you provide less, there's nothing to worry about.
That's correct.
Okay.
I just think for clarity in the record purposes,
Okay.
you'd want to have a condition in your motion that it's included in the site plan. So years in the future, there's not a debate about whether it's a standalone parcel or not.
Eric?
Yeah, we would like to get clarification that you are saying that this is going to be additional public open space included in the, not just open space.
Yeah, we're willing to accept that if that's
So
their
that would be
pleasure.
full
And Eric, I don't know if you finished your presentation.
Are we done? Anything else?
No, he
Anything else?
didn't.
Okay, is there anybody from the public wish to be heard? I have 4 cards. I have 3 who don't wish to speak, but they're just providing comments. Mr. William Holland says, I have lived my entire life, 75 years, and near this project, and for what did you say? For our neighborhood, and I think it's good for the neighborhood and the community. I have another card from Tom Sarario. I feel that the plan proposed should be approved due to the fact that the best plan for the city, the space of the profile west of Palm Beach. And I have a third one from Gerald Sierra. The change our best plan for making our town a better place. And then I have 2 wishing to speak. First one is Joanne Soroto. Please come up to the podium, and Carol Wade, you can come to the other podium. And state your name for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Joanne Sirocco, and I live here in West Palm Beach, okay? I love this project. This board and City Commission supported it 2 years ago. They have come back with the same beautiful project, but just on a smaller scale. 50% less units, less traffic, less intense Parking garages have been cut by 3 stories, plus a new park, more green space and public use. I don't remember the last time that a developer who is already approved has reduced the size of this project, and I hope that you will support it here tonight. And I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
For the record, my name is Carol Mead, and I live at Flagler Point. You know what's going on, and you know all of the surrounding construction that's within 500 feet. We've got Ritz to the south. We have proposed Shorecrest to the north. Olara's already in progress. A lot going on. Within weeks, we are going to be fully engulfed in what I'm going to call a construction conflict zone. All of these developers have proposed that all of their traffic from construction is coming down Pine Street onto Flagler Drive, and that's a block north of us. There's been already explosive growth in traffic on Flagler Point. 46% increase already to 2024. We expect to see from CMUD another 2,000 a day. We expect that by 2027, there's going to be a 40% increase. And I will just say this, what was mentioned by Harvey in terms of the traffic that's currently at Flagler Point, I do not agree with at all. Flagler Point cannot use the Dixie Gate for any commercial traffic, and the north, there's no exiting traffic. It's only coming in. So I don't know when they took that study, but I disagree. Right there in front of Flagler Point is where the road narrows. There's been a lot of serious accidents there, including 4 major accidents right in front of Flagler where that road narrows. And, you know, to propose this, 125, you know, is the regulation, to put it down to, now they're saying 62. The original proposal was to put it onto Pine Street. The people didn't want that. They wouldn't buy because it didn't say Flagler Point, but that was the safety. So we now have 50 feet from our south a driveway, 60 feet from our north a proposed driveway. You're putting us in jeopardy. You're putting us in safety, and all for a marketing ploy for Shorecrest because they don't want to be on Pine Street, which would make us safer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I also have a card from a Mr. Michael Ziff.
Hi, good evening. My name is Michael Zeff. I'm the president and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce of the Palm Beaches. The project before you this evening was thoroughly reviewed by our Government Affairs Committee and our board of directors, both of which voted unanimously to endorse this project, and we ask you to do the same this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any other further questions, or?
I did have one final question.
Can't hear you.
One final question to whomever wants to address, probably the applicant. In the design of the roof of the garage was, I know you brought it up in the presentation. Was there any concern about the level of reflectivity given the 3 high-rise buildings going around with view sheds looking over the structure, looking down at a large reflective white roof could potentially be pretty traumatic? Was there any thought, the design team or from the city's perspective, given to the character of that? I mean, I realize it's a roof, but.
It's lead gold, isn't it?
Yes, and I appreciate the albedo component of it tremendously. I just want to make sure it's not, you know, one of these super shiny materials that people are going to be, you know, staring at from their balconies.
Sorry, I'll answer that. I think it was a poor choice of words for me before. It's not reflective in terms of mirror casting light onto adjacent buildings. This is just a light-colored surface so that it doesn't take on heat. Mm-hmm. It is not reflecting visible light around you and casting it upon the buildings adjacent to you. That was just a poor choice of words for me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this point, the evidence gathering portion of the proceeding is concluded, and we return to the board for discussion. Sam, you want to start?
First, I want to comment on the variance for the traffic. I'm very familiar with this part of the city, and I've seen some of those accidents on Flagler Drive, and I've gone into many of these buildings. And in my opinion, and I think a lot of the opinions, is a big part of that is the parking that's been allowed to be along Flagler Drive, where you're pulling out into traffic, and there's parked vehicles right there. And I think what I recall, I believe Harvey mentioned that that purchasing all those spots means there'll be no cars parked in front of the building. I mean, I think that's a huge step in helping certainly the people leaving the building from oncoming traffic. I would encourage Flagler Point to look at the same thing, because if Flagler Point has cars parked in front of their building, you're causing your own issues. If you can purchase the spaces, I personally wasn't even aware that was an option, but if you can purchase the spaces that would eliminate what I think is most of the traffic issue, that would alleviate the issue right there. I don't see any issue with the in and out traffic simply from residents, in terms of causing additional traffic, because that is just a one-way in. It's not a one-way in and out for Flagler Point at that north entrance. The other variances, I mean, they are, as far as I recall, they're fairly standard that we've had from other buildings, and don't seem to have any issue. I just, the one thing that just seemed odd to me, I hope that there's maybe some more communication between staff and certainly the applicant on how to best utilize the park for both the building and, to make it a public park, to use it the right way, and to, think about it a little bit, more collaboratively, because I think that it could be a great feature that benefits both the building and the city. It's great that that's on the table in terms of using the land in that way. Just, maybe it seemed like maybe, I don't know if it wasn't as talked about, or, the ideas weren't fleshed out completely, but, there's a good opportunity here to have it as a great public space that other buildings around here can use, and kind of avoid some of the issues that come along with having that sort of public open space.
Patrick?
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what you mentioned. I think this is a very smart plan. I can see all of the layers of revisions, talking about previous versions, conversations they had with the neighbors. I can see the product of that, and I think it's a lot of great effort was put into what we're seeing tonight. So I applaud everyone for that. I mean, the plan itself is great. It's especially the ground level plane. It's fully activated. I think it's going to add a lot to the street, both on Pine and on Flagler. I certainly would be supportive of what we talked about earlier relative to the park, adding the park component. My only other concerns with the project would just be the material character of the roof, which I believe we heard, which were addressed, and maybe I'd just make a point to staff maybe to review that component of it in the context of the surrounding projects, and also the materiality of the parking screen mechanism. I've not seen that application used much. I'm sure it's a great system. I just don't know in terms of the longevity of that, how it holds up in hiding the parking. How does it get cleaned, et cetera. I don't know if that's part of the level 3 review or not, but those are my only two concerns about the project itself. Other than that, I'm largely supportive.
Thank you. Jean?
Without being long-winded, I just wanted to get clarification. So Sam, the public space that's existing was created for the bonus. And so there was some additional space, which is kind of marked off with the dashed or the dotted lines. You have, I guess you take issue with that not being included in the site plan so that they reserve the right to do something with it later, or?
No, I don't have an issue with it at all. I think that I was just trying to understand the rationale behind it, because if the intent was only to have 4,600 of open space, then you have 4,600 square feet that could be utilized for building amenities. So I was it just didn't make sense I just wanted to understand what the purpose of doing it in that way was. That's all that was.
Okay.
Just trying to understand it.
You were just coming at it from a developer standpoint?
No, just trying to understand why it wouldn't be included, because it was mentioned a few times that it wasn't included in the site plan, but it's here, but it's not part of the site plan.
So it's still part of the parcel, it's just not part of the site plan because that bonus requirement was that specific piece of land was to satisfy the height bonus requirement. And so it's all that's really needed, and then the rest is just excess.
But if I can say something to that point, if the viability of the space as a public open space, as a planted space, certainly in the long term is improved by having it in this larger configuration.
Yeah.
If that space was reused, I see it becoming a lot less viable in terms of a public open space.
It would have to come before some board, I would assume.
But just in terms of the proportion, the space, the walkability of it,
Right.
it's certainly a lot more nicer to have the generous space.
Can I ask our counsel here? We're simply voting on the variances. We're not voting on the site plan in any way, shape, or form?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So I would say that there wouldn't have to be any requirements. We wouldn't have to add any language to this pertaining to any of the variances. If the variances are acceptable, then there wouldn't need to be any.
Well, other than the one
I just
about the
wanted to make
trees.
sure that the questions were based on the standards of review, and any analysis or dissent was based on the standards of review. So I guess we're all on the same page now.
Yeah.
It would affect the variance relative to the trees.
Eric, do you want to say something, or?
For the level 3, remember your standards are on the back there, and one of them is public realm. If you choose to change and require as one of the conditions of approval based on the public realm that you wanted that had to be included as part of the public park, which the applicant said that they would agree to, then you could add that as a condition to say the project is required to have now the excess area part of the, but that would be part of your public realm condition, that's.
But this isn't a site plan approval.
Well, but it wouldn't be the site plan, but as part of the level 3, project would have to expand the park to be more than, because as if you thought that the proposed park would not be sufficient to be a public open space, even though it technically meets the number of square feet that you would have to have the rest of it, and the applicant has said that they would agree to that, so I just wanted to put that out there, that is a route that you could, that is one of the considerations that you have in your.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Any other questions? Anybody want to make a motion on page 31 for the variances first?
I move that the planning board grant the variances associated with planning board case number 1955C, a request by Harvey Oyer of Schutz and Bowen on behalf of Temple Israel of West Palm Beach for variances from sections 94-209, 94-312, 94-215, and 94-443 of the city's zoning and land development regulations as listed in the staff report dated December 16, 2025. This motion is based upon the testimony presented at the hearing along with the application submitted, and the staff report, which constitute competent, substantial evidence. The planning board hereby makes findings of fact that the application complies with each of the applicable criteria in Article 2, Section 4, Section 94-38D6 of the City of West Palm Beach zoning and land development regulations.
You have a second?
I'll second.
Conditions of the,
Do we go to the second one too, if conditions are imposed, or? Because we're talking about public open space?
That would be the next one. That's the next one.
Conditions relate to level 3 approval.
Okay, we'll do the next one, okay. We have a mover, we have a seconder, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion's approved unanimously. Second item is the level 3 special review, page 33.
I'll make a motion.
Second?
I move that the planning board
We need a seconder.
Oh, well, I need to read it first.
Jean?
I need to read it first.
We need a second.
He's going to read it.
You second it?
No, I need to read it.
Huh?
He needs to make the motion first.
Okay.
I move that the planning board grant planning board case number 1955C, a request by Harvey Oyer of Shetson Bowen on behalf of Temple Israel, West Palm Beach, for the approval of a level 3 special review with variances to allow the construction of a 27-story, 306-foot tall residential development consisting of 100 multifamily residential units within the Korea Mixed Use District Core 1 subdistrict. This motion is based upon the testimony presented at the hearing, along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitute competent substantial evidence. The planning board hereby makes findings of fact that the application complies with each of the applicable special review standards found in section 94-55B2 of the City of West Palm Beach zoning and land development regulations. In addition, the granting of this variance is subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report dated December 16th, 2025. I move that these conditions are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the zoning and land development regulations. Sorry, I need to read the modified section, right? Yeah, sorry. In addition, the granting of this variance is subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report dated December 16th, 2025, with the further condition that condition 6, public realm, condition 5B is included with respect to the westward portion of the parcel being included as part of the public park. I move that these conditions as modified are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the zoning and land development regulations and consistency with the comprehensive plan of the City of West Palm Beach.
Okay, I need a second.
I think we need a little bit more information.
Just to clarify, condition 5B is provide a one-time payment to the city's tree mitigation fund for the 73 required trees that was our variance request.
Yeah.
So if you're modifying that, that would modify it down to 58 trees if you want to change the variance, but you voted on that. So I think the modification or the additional condition may just be an additional condition, not to 5B. Yep. 5B was just to the tree mitigation.
Correct. Yep.
So maybe it's just a new condition that we include the western part of that.
So it would be a new condition.
Yep.
I think the key would be pay into the tree fund for whatever trees are not able to be put on the property and not necessarily put a number. You have in there that at 73 now, but if they have less, you could say, as Peter said in his thing, that if less trees get put on there, then they wouldn't have to pay into the tree fund. I mean, or if they put more trees on the site, they wouldn't have to pay for those on the tree fund.
We agree to that.
Yeah.
So maybe there's two modifications. One is the language of 5B, that we pay into the tree mitigation fund for any trees that don't add up to 100, which is the requirement. And then a new condition that the western portion of the open space be included in the site plan approval and be part of the public open space.
Okay. Do I need to say that? So I will modify the conditions again to include that any additional trees that are paid into the fund
Under 100.
under 100, and that the western half of the western portion of the public open space be included in the site plan approval as part of the public open space.
Now, can I have a second?
Second.
Second? Any discussion? We've had enough, right? All right, let's put this to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Everybody in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Yeah. We'll do a 5-minute recess. How's that? So we can go to the bathrooms. Have to go to the bathroom.
Let's see here. We're now going to call case number 1069EE. May we hear from the applicant?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members. Happy holidays. For the record, my name is Heather Allen. I'm with Kaiser Legal, and my office is located at 55 Southeast 2nd Avenue in Delray Beach. It's my pleasure to be here tonight to present the amendments to the Kaiser University Community Service Plan Development Master Plan. I hope that my presentation will be a little shorter than the previous one.
God bless you.
So just a quick reminder here, we're here to request a major plan development amendment seeking some minor updates to future uses of building areas on the master plan, and we're also seeking to amend development regulations. This is for the Kaiser University campus located at 2600 North Military Trail. It's north of Okeechobee Boulevard on the east side of Military Trail. The overall property is just under 100 acres in size. There are 3 parcels within the CSPD and 2 commercial parcels along Military Trail. So proposed amendments to the master plan. So my client, Kaiser University, acquired the campus in 2015 from Northwood University, and they continue to build out the property. So the updates we're seeking tonight are just based on some continued planning for development of the campus, meeting the needs of their current and future student populations. Highlighted in green on the northern portion of the campus, this is building area number 16. We're adding classroom uses to this area so that the new label will be student union, dormitories, classrooms, and aquatic center. In blue, within the central portion of the campus, this is building area number 12. We're adding dormitory uses to this area such that the approved future uses will be cultural center, classrooms, administrative, and dormitory. And I'll note that these are all uses that are permitted within the master plan. We're just kind of moving some locations around. With respect to the amendments, staff has added a couple development regulations applicable to the campus. One of them is here. My client has no concerns with those additional development regulations. What I want to spend the most time on is the amendments to the development regulations within our development order for the CSPD that apply to parking rate. We have, as background, the code required parking for colleges and universities requires 1 space per student station, 1 space per faculty or staff member, 1 per 4 seats and places of assembly, and 20 parking spaces for visitors. As applied to Kaiser University, the code results in an excess of parking as compared with actual demand. Here, a big part of the reason for that is that we have this requirement for seats for places of assembly, and your current parking code does not allow for reductions in parking when you have concurrent uses, like you do on a campus. Most of these assembly places serve the student population that are already on campus. They don't need to park 2 cars for 1 person. I'll also note that variances from the parking requirements are expressly prohibited in your code. There is a long history of this campus working through solutions to address this excessive parking requirement. So the first that I'm aware of is in 2012 when Northwood University obtained approval for 2 development regulations that modified the code required parking. So the development regulations in place today allow for 1 parking space per 2 student stations rather than 1 for 1, and 1 parking space per adjunct or per 2 adjunct or part-time faculty members rather than 1 per 1. My client purchased the property in 2015 and, of course, identified this as an issue for development of the campus. And so in 2017, they obtained approval for a text amendment to the code. This was specific to the CSPD zoning district to allow a parking waiver for college and universities only. The problem that we're facing now is that that waiver capped the reduction at 30%. So I have a slide that kind of tells you what that looks like in practice. Under today's current city code regulations, the development regulations applicable to the property, including that 30% waiver, based on the current student enrollment of 1,088 full-time on-campus students, we're required to supply 1,118 parking spaces. I'll also note that over the past 10 years now, my client has processed a number of development orders. In addition to this text amendment, they've come in with a new dormitory. They've obtain approval for an athletic stadium, including the football field and bleacher component, as well as an addition to that component, and they have never had any parking deficiency on campus. They're also preparing to develop 2 new projects within the campus, so it was time to reevaluate this parking issue before we move forward and have more seas of parking that aren't being utilized within the property. This slide shows a history of parking counts within the campus to demonstrate the actual parking demand. I'll note a couple things here. The maximum parking demand observed was 670 parking spaces versus the 1,118 spaces that would be required per code. I'll also note that the maximum rate observed was 0.56 parking spaces per student. So Brian Kelly and I, our traffic engineer from Simmons and White, took a look at this set of circumstances. We worked through a number of different scenarios and looked at a number of different items to come up with the appropriate solution here. So in addition to parking counts, we turned to the experts, the ITE manual. They use for colleges and universities, they use that metric of a number of parking spaces per student rather than trying to define we need 1 space per student station or a number of spaces per assembly. It's just a cleaner way to capture the parking requirements for a university because they are driven by the student population. We examined campus data for a 1.5 years of events that were held on campus. We researched municipalities with comparable population sizes. We took a look at their code requirements for parking and also different avenues of relief that were provided for in different municipalities so that we could come up with the appropriate solution here. We, of course, collaborated with city staff on this piece. And so what the crux of my presentation is here tonight is where we landed on parking requirements that are applicable to this campus. So we took that that highest observed parking demand of 0.56 parking spaces per full-time on-campus student, and we added 25% as a buffer. And we landed on 0.7 parking spaces per full-time on-campus student. We also have a couple of additional protections here to make sure that the campus always will have sufficient parking. We're required to add a 10% mitigation on top of that parking requirement to account for future increases in enrollment. And we are also required when full-time on-campus student population reaches 1,400 students, we would have to do an updated parking demand study just to check in, make sure that rate is still appropriate. The language of the development regulations is here, and we do have a small change that we're going to make. So we're going to clarify in condition 28 and 43 that this 1,400 student requirement is triggered by full-time on-campus students rather than just students. And that's because we do have a number of online-only students who obviously are not creating a parking demand. Same thing here on number 43. These are the amendment standards. You have a substantial justification statement, parking demand study, a whole lot of data in your backup demonstrating that we have met all of the standards here for approval. Staff is recommending approval. Staff is in agreement with the proposed modifications to the conditions. So with that, I think I will wrap it up with a request for a favorable recommendation and open it up to questions.
Okay, thank you so much. Any questions of the applicant? If not, let's hear from staff.
Good evening, Planning Board members. For the record, Kevin DeFrank, Senior Planner with the City's Development Services Department. And I will be presenting staff's findings and recommendation for the subject agenda item. Let's see if it opens up. Okay.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Should have been with your kid.
So the applicant's agent thoroughly presented the request for tonight and just move forward. And staff finds that the request complies with the amendment standards found in section 9432A of the City Zoning and Land Development Regulations. And staff finds the request complies with the site design qualitative development standards found in section 94-35C. And therefore, staff recommends approval with conditions of the subject plan development major amendment requests. And as the applicant's agent stated, staff is recommending the conditions of approval with slight minor modification to condition 1AI to add the full-time on-campus wording between 1,400 and students. And the minor modification to 1.3, condition of approval 1EI, to add the wording of full-time on-campus between 1,400 and students. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you so much. Any questions of staff? And if not, would anyone from the public wish to be heard? One at a time, please. Okay. If not, we'll bring it back to the board. I do want to begin with one observation. I've been on this board a long time, and we have seen time and time and time again, our parking regulations have been challenged because we require too much parking. And all the experts who've come in have told us that, and that's been the trend, that we have reduced, whether it's for condominiums or apartments or other type things, consistent with what we're hearing. You know, I just think of myself when I was old enough to have a car, me and all contemporaries couldn't wait to drive. I have a son who still doesn't own a car, you know?
Yeah, but when you were young, the cars were 50 feet long.
That's right. No, but it was we had to rev it up and get it going. But I do think, you know, it is helpful to look at the new realities. And when we have outside experts and outside organizations who look at it, they've consistently have told us.
Yeah.
We require too much parking sometimes. The city has been behind on that, and we must have had a dozen different requests along these lines. I'm not sure if that applies here. I just want to make that observation. That's been the trend we've seen. Anyway, other questions or comments?
No.
I appreciate the usage data with the permits or the decals, the student decals, and so we actually see what the usage is. You know, I don't know if that'll change in the future, but it seems to be pretty consistent over the years, so.
I very much like the fact you guys built in at 1,400 to take a fresh look at it. Because we never know, it could change a different direction. But it seemed like a very thoughtful presentation, makes a lot of sense to me. But I know how you all feel. If not, if there's no concerns.
Maria, I have a question for you, a quick one. If we know that the trend is for lower and lower and lower parking demand, at what point do you think we should look at the zoning requirements and update those?
We are currently, with the master plan that is going on right now, we are evaluating the parking ratios.
But the master plan is only downtown.
Yes, so
Okay.
in the downtown, that is even lower, and we are working on a parking analysis for the rest of the city to see if it is necessary to lower it. So we're working on that already.
Do you agree with that statement, though, about the trend being that we've...
Yes, and definitely, as a city, we want to provide more alternative transportation modes for the citizens so they don't have to rely on just single occupancy vehicles. So that is where we're going. But you have to kind of provide the options before we restrict the parking. The reality is, even in the cases where the city requires more, the applicant is usually providing less when they see the demand is not there. They are the ones paying for those parking spaces, so if they see that they are not needed, they just lower them.
They're just lucky Will's not here, because Will loves parking. That's his pet peeve.
But we are definitely analyzing that, and we will have some changes in the near future.
All right.
But just as a quick aside, I watched the video of the master plan meeting here last week. I would encourage you to look it up under YouTube. It was very insightful in terms of the approach. Not crazy about limiting the height, but that's my personal view.
So you want a limited height?
I'm closer with you. Anyway, looking for a motion.
I'll move if I can find it.
If someone has it handy.
No, I don't have it handy.
I have it. I'll move.
You could second.
Okay.
I move that the planning board recommend to the city commission approval of planning board case number 1069EE, a request by Heather Jo Allen Esquire of Kaiser Legal PLLC on behalf of Everglades College Incorporated for a major amendment to the Kaiser University Community Service Plan Development, CSPD, to amend the master plan by adding new uses and to amend the current development regulations. The motion is based upon the testimony presented at the hearing, along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitute competent substantial evidence. The planning board hereby makes finding of fact that the application complies with the required standards in sections 94-32A and 94-35C of the City of West Palm Beach zoning and land development regulations. In addition, this recommendation is made subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report dated December 16, 2025. I move that these conditions are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the zoning and land development regulations and consistency with the comprehensive plan of the City of West Palm Beach.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? We have a
Yes.
correction to the motion, right?
Yes, to add the modified wording for the conditions of approval.
And I will.
That amendment to your motion?
I do accept that amendment.
That amendment, you need a second. All right.
Do you want me to read it?
No, not necessary. We're just going to add those words. Is that good enough, Sam?
Yeah,
okay.
so I would add that
She'll clean it up in the minutes.
with the amended words on our screen related to on-site students, full-time on-site students.
Okay, thank you for that, and it was
I
accepted
agree.
by the second.
Yep.
So we have an amended motion, an amended second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you so much. That then brings us then to code revision cases, of which there are none. Other business, unfinished business, new business. If not, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.